for joining us for the latest edition of Council Connections. This program is an opportunity for your elected officials to keep you up to date on the events, legislation, and initiatives that matter most. I'm City of Laurel Communications Director Audrey Barnes, and I'm pleased to be joined by Ward 1 Council Member James Kole. Councilman Kole, thank you for being with us today.
Very welcome. My pleasure.
Now, this is actually your second time being on Council Connections since you were elected in November of 2021. So I don't want to leave anybody out, though. So let's backtrack a little bit and let people kind of get caught up on who you are.
Certainly.
First of all, you grew up in Pennsylvania.
I did.
You're a Penn State graduate.
All the way, blue and white.
And you have a very interesting major, landscape contracting. Tell us a little bit about that. It sounds really fun.
So landscape contracting is a plant science major that is a combination between agricultural sciences and landscape architecture. So I have a background in landscape design, and I also had lots of plant classes, business classes, environmental classes. So it's not just plants and cutting grass. I have a lot of background that goes with that degree.
And I understand your neighbors are always just going by your house asking for tips on gardening and things like that.
I am one of the most popular people at a party. When they figure out you know plants, they are going to drag you outside or show you pictures or what do you think of this plant? It's really fun. It's a great icebreaker. If you don't know somebody, they certainly have a question about their yard.
Yeah, and yours is beautiful for sure. So we know that in the first episode you told us that you were very active in just community groups. Even in high school, you were like, the treasurer of 5 different groups? And
5 of them.
Always active. But here's something I don't think people may know. You were actually on the town board of your town in Pennsylvania as a younger man?
In Pennsylvania, they have a lot of local government, but I was on the city borough. So in Pennsylvania, there are boroughs. There was a vacancy. It was a very small town, and the council went ahead to fill the vacancy until they could have a special election and appointed me temporarily to the town borough.
So did that plant the seed, if you'll pardon the gardening pun, for your political career?
It was definitely enlightening. It was something that was different than everything else that I'd been involved in up until that point. I learned how to read legislation then. It was a much smaller city, so I sat right next to the attorney. Everybody fit around one table that was like the size of a dining room. So you got very intimate, and I was able to ask any questions that I had. I could just turn around and just talk to them right there. So I learned a lot during that process. I chose not to run for re-election, went back to college because I was doing that just during the summer while I was home. I did not seek the special election. And then once I came to Laurel, got a little bit more involved. It was definitely something that planted the seed for me to continue on.
So from what I understand from your colleagues, you are a prolific reader. You want to know the background of the issues that are affecting Laurel, that are things that are going to come before the city council. Tell us about that. What's your preparation like for your job as city councilman?
Certainly. I don't want to comment on anything that I don't understand. Of things that are sent to us, whether it's from the administration, other council members, constituent groups. One of the documents I read was over 400 pages.
Wow.
That's a lot to understand, and I don't want to comment on something that I don't know. So I will read. I'll spend a lot of time Googling. It's a great Saturday morning for me to wake up with coffee and just sit. It's different than my regular full-time job. So I can learn about the city, what we're working on at that point, and be able to speak more clearly about it.
So now that you're well into your term as council member, you have some legislation under your belt. Tell us about your first legislation and some things that you've done since then that your constituents might want to know about.
Sure. So my first piece of legislation was a resolution to establish a Pride Day Planning Committee. I had not written anything at that point. I had reviewed stuff, I had voted on it, but I didn't know what the actual process for introducing something to the city council was. So I worked with the administration, looked at how other committees were set up, and drafted the Pride resolution with the administration to get that set up. Got that passed through with unanimous support from city council. And then as a reward, they made me the chairman because the resolution said that a chairman had to be appointed and as a member of the city council. So
and your first year, you had a very successful event at Goody Park.
We did. October is a different month to hold it. October is LGBTQ plus History Month. Weather in October in Laurel is hit or miss.
Right.
The day before was almost 80. The next day was very cold. So Pride could be hot, could be cold. With the cold weather last year, we still had a very nice turnout. There were over 30 vendors. Lots of people came throughout the day, and it's going to be even bigger this year.
Right, so it's coming in October, so people need to look for that.
Exactly, October 14th this year.
Okay. Well, besides the Pride Committee, you've had some really key roles since you've been in Laurel. You were on the Ethics Commission. You also were on the Main Street Committee, which is still active now, the Historic District Commission. So bring us up to date on all of those committee assignments, commission roles that you have in Laurel now.
Sure. Ethics Commission was really how I started in local government here in Laurel. All these committees are ways for citizens to get involved without having to actually be on council. You can make a difference without being behind these chairs or this seat up here on the dais. As part of ethics, I saw what was going on, really thought I could make a difference. So I did run for re-election. I had to recuse myself from a lot of things during that election year because a council member cannot be voting, or a candidate should not be voting on their own items. After I was elected, I was taken off that commission. That commission does not have any sitting council members on there. That is a check and balance on government to make sure that we are all being above board and really looking out for the citizens to know who their elected officials are. Since then, I have been active with the Historic District Commission and the Environmental Affairs Committee. Both of those have sitting council members that can vote on those. I'm the chairman of the Environmental Affairs Committee, and I try not to vote on Historic District Commission items unless I'm a tiebreaker, but a lot of times I make the motion so I get to vote first.
Well, you certainly sound like you're very, very busy. We mentioned that you're on the Main Street Committee. This is an older committee that's been restarted and rejuvenated now. So, I know as the communications director, I often hear people say, Laurel is much more than Main Street. Let's focus on other parts of Laurel besides Main Street. So I want to ask you, how do you go about trying to represent not only your constituents in Ward 1, not only the business owners on Main Street, but all of Laurel? What's your mission?
I like to remind everybody that just because we are elected by a certain ward does not mean we only represent that ward. So I am here for all the businesses and all the residents, whether they're in Ward 2, Ward 1. We're here. That's just who elects us. That is not who we are representing. We represent everyone on the city when we're up here. My vote on the council affects everybody in Ward 2, so I should not just be looking out for Ward 1 residents. They're just the people electing me. So I look to the Planning Commission and our master plan when we're thinking about things along Route 1, even though it's outside of my ward, that's still stuff that I'm going to be voting on.
Well, you mentioned a master plan. Another plan that we're working on here in Laurel is a strategic plan for the city.
Okay.
And people should look out for that coming soon. So what is your strategic plan for Laurel? What would you like to see us focus on?
I would like to see us focus on smart growth. So when I say smart growth, I mean things that bring more residents to Laurel. Look out for stormwater management. We don't want to contribute any more to our environmental problems. Make sure we have a lot of green space and make sure that we're also planning for our infrastructure, whether that's public works, traffic, many of our utility systems. We need to make sure that all of that is being taken into account when we're building more. We want more density. The area is not going to shrink. The metropolitan area continues to grow, and we don't want to be left behind. We want to grow with it, but we need to have a plan that takes into account everything that I just mentioned in a smart way that represents everyone and is fair.
Good idea. So let's look ahead. When you
Sure.
think about Laurel, say in 2028, 5 years from now,
Okay.
what does it look like to you?
To me, we have a vibrant Main Street, becomes a destination. We want people to come there. How do you get them there? Create things that are open later. Have events there. Not just a couple events a year. You want a destination where there's entertainment, maybe more housing. Currently have a lot of lower structures. There might be some opportunity for some higher buildings down there. A lot of the newer generations don't want to have yards, but they still want all the amenities that we get. So that's an opportunity in our master plan, which is coming up, for us to look at how do we change that space without losing the feel of Main Street, but revitalizing it, bringing the business back.
So speaking of changes, the city is having its first big community culture event.
Yeah.
Well, what would you change about Laurel's culture, you think, that would make it a better place to live, work, and play?
I don't think that I would change anything about Laurel's culture. Okay. Laurel is a great spot between the two metro areas where all the cultures come together. Since I've been here, I have watched it change, especially during the pandemic. A lot of people that were historically closer to their work in the major metropolitan downtown areas have moved out of the suburbs. They don't have to be there every day, so they can live here, work here. They've changed our culture. There are a lot of businesses. That's how I'm learning what these other groups are in Laurel, is these new businesses are coming to town and they're drawing the people. And I can connect that way when I go visit these places and some of the events that they have.
Okay, well, that's all good information, but I want to throw something at you. This is like my little bonus question.
All right.
And the people who watched the first episode will really be able to kind of weigh in on this.
Uh-oh.
You actually talked about doing some legislation for one of Laurel's historic trees, the old walnut tree in Old Town. So fill us in. Whatever happened? We want to know.
So the Historic District Commission did save the tree.
Okay.
The tree is going to be there for as long as it's alive. Hopefully the new owner takes good care of it. We need to look at other ways that we can add initiatives to help them, because old trees do take maintenance. But in the legislation, we're working on a complete revamp of the Historic District Commission code. So what are the guidelines for that? How do we make sure that these older trees are protected? So this will be the framework that we use for other tree initiatives in the city. We're redoing the list of what's a native, what should you plant, what shouldn't you plant, what do you need to have a permit for, so that people actually know what's happening. That legislation should be coming out this fall.
And even though I joked about it, it's really kind of serious to Laurel, because
It really
we
is.
are Tree City, USA, right?
We are. We're Tree City USA, meaning that the city itself plants a lot of trees.
Right.
But we want to create initiatives for more homeowners to plant trees as well.
All right. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope the viewers have enjoyed it as well. If you would like to see the original episode of Council Connections that Councilman Kole was on, you can go to the Laurel TV official YouTube channel. All of our programs, all of our government meetings, and everything we shoot at Laurel TV is up on our YouTube channel, so check it out. I'm Communications Director Audrey Barnes. Thank you to Ward 1 Council Member James Kole. We will see you next time.